So moving on to our fourth speaker of the night. Okay, Celia is going to be our next speaker, and the title of her talk is "The Great War as Seen Through Film."
Good evening to everyone. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for attending our presentations. Also, thank you to Adam and Sarah for helping us prepare them. As you're seeing, the presentations are about very different topics. I hope you're enjoying all of them. Mine, as Adam has said, is about the Great War as seen through film. So I've done it with the Prezi. It's a bit like a PowerPoint, but slightly different. No, it doesn't matter. Thank you. Okay. So first of all, here's the plan of my presentation. I'm going to start by telling you about the historical frame, but very briefly, because I'm sure you all know about the Great War. Then I'll make an introduction about why I've chosen this topic and why I think it can be interesting to study through movies. And then I've divided the presentation into some main themes considering the war. And those are the irrationality of war, the horror of the war, war's love stories, animal companions, and finally a message of peace. Then at the end of the presentations, I'll give some conclusions. So each of the themes I've chosen is going to be represented by a scene of the movie I accorded to each theme, and I'll explain it. Okay, so let's get started with the historical frame. The Great War is also known as the World War I or First World War, and it was a warlike conflict that took place in Europe between 1914 and 1918, and it meant the opposition of two blocs, which were the Allies, composed by the United Kingdom, France, and Russia. And those ones were against the Central Powers that were mainly Germany and Austria-Hungary. The causes of the war were mainly the imperialism and also the war's definitive trigger, which was the assassination of the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, and this led to a diplomatic crisis. It was a very violent conflict that implied more than 9 million combatants who were killed. And at the end of the war, several independent nations were restored or created. And also we assisted to the creation of the League of Nations, which was both an organization and an agreement of the countries who had participated or witnessed the war and decided that they couldn't let that happen again. It was a failure because the Second World War took place. So the introduction. Why I've chosen this topic? Well, I happen to like history and I happen to like cinema also. So I thought that maybe it could be interesting to try to mix both. First of all, I have to say that we are on the anniversary, the 100th anniversary of the outbreak of the First World War, and I did some research and found that in fact there were many more movies about the Second World War than the first one. Why? Because the Second World War can be a very cinematic, so the cinema has turned to it, and we can find not only movies but books or theatrical plays about it. But what about the first? Where are its movies? I thought that the First World War appeared as a forgotten war, that maybe wasn't considered as cinematic as the second one. Maybe because the characters are less clear, because we all know more or less who the bad ones are in the Second World War, like the Nazis, and it's very easy to establish a plot of a movie based on that. And probably because the Second World War gives the opportunity to create stories about more adventure or action. But I did my research, and also my classmates and teachers helped me to get some movies to represent the First World War. So this is what I'm going to show you now through the themes I've chosen. So first of all, the irrationality of war. For that, I've taken a film that's called Paths of Glory. It's a 1957 movie, and it's about a French colonel who is played by Kurt Douglas. Sorry, and some of his men are accused of cowardice. I think it's because they're sent to an impossible mission, but I think the mission was that they were meant to get back a hill that had been occupied by the enemy, but it was an impossible mission. So instead of getting there, fighting and dying, they decide to get back and are accused of treason and cowardice and executed for that. So this movie shows the irrationality of the system, of the military machine, and shows its absurdity and capacity for dehumanization. Because they're not only fighting the enemy, but they're fighting their own soldiers. So for that, I've chosen the last scene of the movie. I'd call it Back to Human. And I'm going to explain it first and show it to you. It's about a German girl who's been called by the army, and she's going to start to sing a song. So at the beginning, the soldiers are behaving like animals, because probably it's the first woman they saw in ages, but also because it's the enemy. And then when she's gonna start singing, even if they don't understand the words of the song, because she will be singing in German, they come back to themselves, from the soldier to the man they are.
Als man ihm die Botschaft brach, dass sein Herzliebchen im Sterben lag, da ließ er all sein Hab und Gut und eilte seinem Herzliebchen zu. Da ließ er all sein Hab und Gut und eilte seinem Herzliebchen zu. Ach, bitte, Mutter, bring ein Licht, mein Liebchen stirbt nicht, seh es nicht. Das war ein ganzes Leben, das war für mein treuer Besatz, der gibt ein Mädchen ein ganzes Leben.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to the second film I've chosen. It's The Horror of the War. For that I've chosen a very good movie, but a very terrible one, which is Johnny Got His Gun. It's a 1957 movie. Sorry, it's a 1971 movie. And it's about a young American soldier who has lost his legs, his arms, he cannot see, and he cannot talk. So he's a prisoner in his own body. And the movie is not just about his current condition, but it also goes backwards to explain some passages of the war, but also the life he had before he had to went to war. So we have in this movie a wish of death, because the soldier would like to be killed, and he communicates that to the people who are looking after them through Morse code, and he isn't granted his wish. And so instead of that, he asks for being showed from city to city, so that people can get to see what war has done to him and get really conscious about what war means. But again, he is not granted his wish, and he realizes that he's gonna be let to die there in his situation until he gets old and naturally dies. So I've chosen also the last scene of the movie, and in which he gives a speech noticing how terrible his destiny is going to be and asking for help again.
Well, now I know. He'll never let me out. They'll keep me a secret here until someday when I'm old man, I'll sneak away from them and die. It isn't easy, though. Inside me, I'm screaming and yelling and howling like a trapped animal. And nobody pays any attention. If I had arms, I could kill myself. If I had legs, I could run away. If I had a voice, I could talk and be some kind of company for myself. I could yell for help. But nobody'd help me. Not even God, because there isn't any God. Couldn't be in a place like this. And yet, I've just got to do something. Because I don't see how I can go on like this much longer. SOS, help me. SOS, help me. SOS, help me.
Okay, so the third thing is going to be a bit happier. It's about Words Love Story. For that, I've chosen the movie, 2004 movie, A Very Long Engagement. It's based on a book of the same name. I had to read that book back in high school and I loved it. And it's a fictional tale about a young woman who gets engaged before the war starts, and then her fiancé is sent to war. So some months after that, she receives the news that her fiancé has been killed, but she decides not to believe it. So for that, she does some kind of games little kids tend to do, as if I have my whole meal, Mom will allow me to stay later tonight, even if that doesn't happen. So what she does, she has a limp, and for example, I remember she ran through a field and she said, if I arrive to the road before the car does, my fiancé is alive. So through her story, because she investigates what really happened, she doesn't believe the official version, we get to know some aspects of the war that can be related to also the first movie I explained, Paths of Glory, because for example, the theme of punishment of deserters is also treated here. And in fact, in the scene I'm gonna show you, her fiancé is in a terrible battle, and after that he notices he cannot go on anymore with the war, and he decides to hurt himself in order to be sent home.
Et puis, il y a bleu, tu veux la voir, ta fiancée, t'as gagné ton ticket.
And finally, a message. I'm sorry, I wanna skip one already. Animal Companion. So I've chosen this title because it's about the War Horse movie. It's a 2011 movie. And, well, it's the story of a teenage boy who gets a horse and trains it, but then the war comes and horses are required by people who go to work because they were very used during that war. So this story allows the director to go through many other aspects of war. And I think that it's interesting because we hadn't had that many movies, recent movies about that theme till now. And as it's a very well-known director, I think that it can set precedent to other movies. I also think that it's a good way to approach conflict because none of the other movies I've talked about can be suitable for kids, for example, while this one is. And I think that it's a good way for them to learn about this conflict. And finally, related to the use of horses during the Great War, I've read that they were very useful when it came to their technical use, and that they served to increase the morale between the soldiers, and that they were so useful for people at the war that most of the time it was considered as worse losing a horse than losing a human soldier. So the scene I'm going to show you is about that movie, and it's about the war horse being trapped between the two enemy trenches, and here it doesn't show, but he survives. The movie Joyeux Noël. It's a 2005 movie, and it's about a real episode that happened in Christmas Eve, where men decided to forget their differences, and they set a truce of humanity and goodwill. So what actually happens in the scene we're going to see is that one of the armies starts singing carols, and then the other one starts as well, and they decide to stop the war for some hours, and they become mates, play football, and even save each other, forgetting their army they belong to. And we really see that they don't even care about what they're fighting for, or they don't understand why they're fighting for.
Ils ont l'air de bien faire la fête en face. Ça ne vous donne pas envie d'en faire autant?
So to conclude, I think we've seen a very different ways to approach the topic through the different movies. This is because maybe the different movies approach multiple targets, different kinds of public, and I think that cinema presents itself as a very good way to learn history other than the typical one. And also being aware of the fact that most of the movies are just interpretations or fictional stories. All of them send us a message of peace as an opposition to the war, and they constitute a good weapon against war. So, thank you.
Great.